Hello and welcome back. It is Bible Scribe. Thank you so much for your time and joining me today. I ran across some amazing information in a writing as I was studying for my Simon Magus video. But this doesn't have anything to do with Simon Magus. One of the writings that I've been reading is the Pseudo-Clementine Homilies. This writing is supposedly a 4th century writing, so 300s AD. And it may have actual roots even earlier into the 2nd century AD. So it's a well-established document of the Christians of the first couple centuries after Christ. And it records the conversion and subsequent work of the Bishop Clement, who started out in Rome with the apostles, specifically with the Apostle Peter. And so this writing has a ton of interesting information. During one of their travels, while they're in the coastal town of Tripoli, Beirut, on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, Peter spends time speaking to the people of that town. Of course, these are very Gentile peoples, but he's speaking to them about idol worship specifically and different things concerning idols and pagan worship of gods, orgies, things like this, and warning them against such things. He specifically has come behind Simon Magus in this town and is trying to undo some of the damage that's been done because of the teachings of Simon Magus. But it's so interesting because he gets into a discussion about demonology. And I thought it was so apropos and interesting and helps clear so many things up that I wanted to make this video specifically about the demonology taught by Peter and recorded in the Clementine Homilies. So the way I think we'll do this is I'm just going to read through a few sections of the homily number 9 of the Clementine Homilies. And we're starting in chapter 8 of that homily. Now in this chapter, it's Peter talking to the people of Tripoli. They have seen the works of Simon Magus and heard his teaching, and some of them have now come to Christ. So he's trying to bring them up in the faith and teach them how to live the Christian life. But one of the things he is talking about here is demonology, demons. And he says to them that, you've heard a lot from Simon Magus, but it would be better for you if you would accept the ways of Christ, because this will protect you from demons. So he really starts talking about that in the next chapter, chapter 9, and that's where we'll start reading. It says, "Since on the other hand you are oppressed by strange sufferings inflicted by demons, on your removal from the body, meaning your death, you shall have your souls also punished forever. Not indeed by gods inflicting vengeance, but because such is the judgment of evil deeds. For the demons, having the power of means of the food given to them, are admitted into your bodies by your own hands. And lying hid there for a time, they become blended with your souls." Peter says here that demons are actually allowed into a person by the person themselves, and that they become then blended with that person. They attach to the person and stay. He continues, he says, "And through the carelessness of those who think not, or even wish not, to help themselves, upon the dissolution of their bodies, their souls being united to the demon, are of necessity borne by it into whatever places it pleases." Now here he's saying that when a person dies with demons attached to them, and essentially he's talking about a wicked person who would then go to Hades and is not a Christian. He says that at the point of death, then that person goes to the place in Hades where that demon would most likely want to be. Then he adds, "And what is most terrible of all, when at the end of all things the demon is first consigned to the purifying fire, the soul which is mixed with it is under the necessity of being horribly punished, and the demon of being pleased. For the soul, being made of light, not capable of bearing the heterogeneous flame of fire, is tortured. But the demon, being in the substance of his own kind, is greatly pleased, becoming the strong chain of the soul that he has swallowed up." These words are amazing, and it is complicated to go through these words, so I am trying to explain it in a more clear way. But what it's saying here is that once a person with demons attached to them goes to Hades after death, that what happens is that the person is punished out of necessity for their wicked deeds, but at the same time, because the demon has drawn them to that place, because it is finding pleasure there, the demon itself loves being down in Hades in these places and gets great pleasure from it. And that the demons become a chain that holds the soul in that place in Hades. Amazing things to think about. And again, I would encourage you, just think about how this all fits with what you do know of demonology and the Bible. This is a writing that came very soon after Jesus walked the earth from the Christians. And it has a high likelihood that this is some of the things that Peter taught to the people of Tripoli. So just realize that as fantastic as some of this sounds, this may actually be one of the best explanations of demons and what they are and how they work against humanity that you're ever going to hear. Moving on to chapter 10 of Homily 9, it says, "But the reason why demons delight in entering to men's bodies is this: being spirits and having desires after meat and drink and sexual pleasure, but not being able to partake of these by reason of their being spirits, and wanting organs fitted for their enjoyment, they enter into the bodies of men in order that, getting organs to minister to them, they may obtain the things that they wish, whether it's meat, food, by means of men's teeth, or it's sexual pleasure by means of a man's members." So the demon attaches itself, comes into a man or a woman because he wants to experience the pleasures of human life. Eat, drink, having sexual pleasure, all the gluttonous vices of humanity, of being in the flesh. So it says, "Hence, in order to the putting of demons to flight, the most useful help is abstinence and fasting and suffering of affliction." Obviously, as he's saying, if the demon itself is seeking physical pleasure through the inhabiting of a human body, then it makes sense that if you abstain from sexual pleasure, if you abstain from eating by fasting, and if you even suffer affliction, that hurts the demon. That removes that pleasure that the demon is seeking. This may help you understand why in some of the writings about the medieval times you hear of people whipping themselves or, in a sense, torturing themselves. Well, a lot of this had to do with their beliefs on demonic activity, trying to expel demons from themselves. In fact, Martin Luther himself wrote a lot about this type of thing. He would lock himself in closets and wrestle with demons, in a sense, to try to get them away from him to protect himself. Peter continues, "For if they enter into men's bodies for the sake of sharing pleasure, it's manifest that they are put to flight by suffering. But inasmuch as some, being of a more malignant kind, will remain in the body that is undergoing punishment, though they are punished with it, therefore it is needful to have recourse to God by prayers and petitions, refraining from every occasion of impurity, that the hand of God may touch him for his cure, as being pure and faithful." So it mentions a tougher, malignant type of demon, one that is a little out of the ordinary, that's harder to deal with. This kind will stay in a man even when it is being tortured and afflicted. And so he says that the only recourse you would have in this situation is prayer to God and petition, in addition to refraining from any kind of impurity or sin, and then expecting the intervention of God to remove that demon. Now, this does remind me of what Christ said to some of the disciples in the Gospels when they tried to expel a demon from a person and they couldn't do it. And then Jesus came to say, And then Jesus came and said to them, this kind only comes out by prayer and fasting. Well, he could have been talking about this more malignant type of demon, more dangerous type of demon that will stay even when it's under pressure, under affliction, so that it requires prayer and fasting. Prayer to God in addition to staying chaste and pure and staying away from sin. Now in chapter 11, Peter continues and says, but it is necessary in our prayers to acknowledge that we have had recourse to God and to bear witness, not to the apathy, but to the slowness of the demon. For all things are done to the believer, nothing to the unbeliever. Therefore, the demons themselves, knowing the amount of faith of those of whom they take possession, measure their stay proportionately. Wherefore, they stay permanently with the unbelieving, tarry for a while with the weak in faith, but with those who thoroughly believe, who do good, they cannot remain even for a moment. For the soul being turned by faith, as it were, into the nature of water, quenches the demon as a spark of fire. Peter's saying here that people that are weak in faith, have a little bit of faith but are on the edge, that some demons do stay in them as well. But then in the believer who is holy, who is righteous, they don't stay for a moment. He says it's like water putting out a fire when they try to enter a Christian. So it just doesn't happen if the person is a true Christian and is truly living that way. He says, the labor, therefore, of everyone is to be solicitous about the putting to flight of his own demon. For being mixed up with men's souls, they suggest to everyone's mind desires after which things they please, in order that he may neglect his salvation. So the demons that do attach themselves, he's saying you have to be careful, because the demons will suggest to your mind things they desire to take place. Suggest to your mind things for you to do that will in turn please the demon. And they do this in order for the person as a Christian to neglect their salvation and turn away from the things of God. Now in chapter 12, whence many, not knowing how they are influenced, consent to the evil thoughts suggested by the demons, as if they were the reasoning of their own souls. Did you hear what he just said? He says essentially that when the demon is attached to you, that the thoughts of the demon towards these lewd acts, things that will bring it pleasure, they manifest inside a person as if they're your own thoughts. You wouldn't know the difference between your thoughts and the thoughts of the demon. It's literally frightening. Wherefore they, these people that are influenced by demons, become less active to come to others who are able to save them. And they do not know that they themselves are held captive by the demons. People that are demon-possessed, as he says, will avoid people who might be able to actually help them, without the person even realizing why they're doing it. And I think that actually I've heard of this in real life, that demon-possessed people will avoid a priest. They will avoid a person who is holy, a person who is good-natured. Because the reason that people will avoid good people that could actually help them is because of the demon. And the person may not even know they're doing that, but that's what they're doing. And of course it says that the person themselves doesn't know they are inhabited by a demon, has no clue. Therefore, the demons who lurk in their souls induce them to think that it is not a demon that is distressing them, but a bodily disease, such as some acrid matter or bile or phlegm or excess of blood or inflammation of membrane or something else. But even if this were so, the case would not be altered of its being a kind of demon. For the universal and earthly soul, which enters on account of all kinds of food being taken to excess by overmuch food or gluttony, is itself united to the spirit as being cognate, which is the soul of man, and the material part of the food being united to the body is left as a dreadful poison to it. Wherefore, in all respects, moderation is excellent. So this section's saying that the demons that lurk inside people make the people think that the issue with them is some kind of malady, a stomach ache, a disease, nagging cough. And so they think it's a medical problem, but never will let them believe in their heads or in their minds that it is actually demonic activity inside them. And it goes on to say that people who are gluttonous because of demonic activity inside them, a demon literally is attached to that person, causing them to want to eat more and more. It says that the demon gets some kind of pleasure out of that, but it can't really imbibe the food. So what happens is that it says the food is really left inside the individual of the gluttonous person, and the food becomes a poison to them. He's talking about obesity. He's talking about gluttony here. So he says, wherefore, in all respects, moderation is excellent. Moderation in all things. Now in chapter 13, we'll continue. But some of the maleficent demons deceive in another way. For at first they do not even show their existence, in order that care may not be taken against them. So he says that the demons sometimes will simply enter into a person, but then just hide and sit and wait. But in due time, by means of anger, love, or some other affection, they will suddenly injure the body by sword or halter or precipice or something else, and at last bring to punishment the deceived souls of those who have been mixed up with them, as we said, withdrawing into the purifying fire. So he says these demons that may enter a person and then hide there will wait until an appropriate moment to cause them to commit suicide, cause them to kill themselves. And then they get the pleasure of going into Hades, to the purifying fire, where they feel the most comfort and pleasure and joy. The demons essentially drag people down to hell. He continues, but others who are deceived in another way do not approach us, being seduced by the instigations of maleficent demons, as if they suffered these things at the hands of the gods themselves, on account of their neglect of them, and were able to reconcile them by sacrifices, and that it is not needful to come to us, but rather to flee from and hate us. At the same time, they hate and flee from those who have greater compassion for them, and who follow after them in order to do good for them. People with these demons, these maleficent demons inside them, are deceived to not approach Christians. And Peter's talking about himself. The demons won't let them approach him and his Christian group, but convinces the person that they're suffering because of the pagan gods and that they need to go make sacrifices to save themselves. So they make sacrifices. And they do this, he says, instead of going to the actual cure, the Christians, the source, Jesus Christ himself. Now in chapter 24, therefore, shunning and hating us, they are deceived, not knowing how it happens that they devise things opposed to their health. They don't understand why they seek after self-destruction, but it's because of the demons. For neither can we compel them against their will to incline towards health, since now we have no such power over them, nor are they able of themselves to understand the evil instigation of the demon. For they know not whence these evil instigations are suggested to them. The demons keep them completely blinded to what's going on. And these are they whom the demons affright, appearing in such forms as they please. It says, and sometimes they prescribe remedies for those who are diseased, and thus they receive divine honors from those who have previously been deceived. And they conceal from many that they are demons, but not from us, who know their mystery, and why they do these things, changing themselves in dreams against those over whom they have power, and why they terrify some and give oracular responses to others, and demand sacrifices from them, and command them to eat with them, that they may swallow up their souls. So Peter here talking about that these demons can appear to these people, and I think he's talking about either physically and or in dreams, where they can take any form they want, and convince the person that they need to do things. They need to make a sacrifice. They need to do this, try this remedy, do that, but never, of course, let on that they are actually being afflicted by that demon. Now in chapter 25, for as dire serpents draw sparrows to them by their breath, so also these draw to their own will those who partake of their table, being mixed up with their understanding by means of food and drink, changing themselves in dreams according to the forms of the images, that they may increase error. For the image neither is a living creature nor has a divine spirit, but the demon that appeared abused the form. What he's talking about here is that people who partake of their table, meaning partake of the sacrifices that are given to idols, partake in pagan god worship, being mixed up in their understanding, the demon will use that against them in their dreams. And the demon will appear to the person as the idol, as the pagan god, demanding things from them, confusing them even further. And as he says, the demon is abusing the form of the god, the pagan god. And he says, how many in like manner have been seen by others in dreams, and when they have met one another when awake, and compared them with what they saw in their dreams, they have not accorded. So that the dream is not a manifestation, but is either the production of a demon or of the soul, giving forms to present fears and desire. For the soul, being struck with fear, conceives forms in dreams. He's saying that the dreams are a lie, they're a sham, and it's either the demon projecting images into the dream of the person, or the person's fears and desires making the forms up in their dream. So this confuses the person further, and of course, again, blinds them to the demonic activity in their life. But if you think that images, as being alive, can accomplish such things, place them on a beam accurately balanced, and place an equipoise on the other scale, then ask them to become either heavier or lighter, and if this is done, they are alive. But it does not so happen. But if it were so, this would not prove them to be gods, for this might be accomplished by the finger of a demon. Even maggots move, but they are not called gods. So Peter here just saying that these idols, no matter whether they're being used by a demon or not, the idols are nothing. They are not gods, they are not alive, they are nothing. So the idols themselves are nothing, and it seems that anything that is produced from an idol's image is actually demonic activity, sometimes directly in the life of a person because the demon is attached to them. Chapter 26. But that the soul of each man embodies the forms of demons after his own preconceptions, and that those who are called gods do not appear, is manifest from the fact that they do not appear to the Jews. But some will say, how then do they give oracular responses, forecasting future things? Peter's saying that some people would say that the gods, the idols, speak, and they actually forecast things. They tell you future events. Peter says this is also false. But suppose it were true. This does not prove them to be gods, for it does not follow, if anything prophesies, that it is a god. For pythons prophesy, yet they are cast out by us as demons and put to flight. But some will say they work cures for some people. It is false. But suppose it were true. This is no proof of Godhead, for physicians also heal many, yet they are not gods. Peter here making a very logical argument that even if these idols do speak and forecast future events, that does not mean anything, because there are people that do that. There are other things that do that. So it is not a proof that they are a god, even if it does happen, which he says does not generally happen, except by the power of a demon. But then he also mentions medical cures for people's diseases. Now this is an interesting statement here. He says, but says one, physicians do not completely heal those of whom they take charge, but these heal oracularly. But the demons know the remedies that are suited to each disease. Wherefore, being skillful physicians and able to cure those diseases which can be cured by men, and also being prophets, and knowing when each disease is healed of itself, so they arrange their remedies that they may gain the credit of producing the cure. So Peter here is saying that there is some sleight of hand, perhaps, to demonic activity in regard to physicians. That the demons act like physicians in a sense because they can trick someone into thinking they've been healed by a medicinal cure. Because the demons themselves know the lifespan or the natural course of any certain type of ailment. So they can obviously predict when that's going to happen and then cause the person to be tricked into thinking that they did something to make that disease go away. Trick that physician into thinking he actually made a cure when he didn't. This is something that we should even think about, I think, in our modern age. Do the physicians really know what they're doing, or are they being duped into thinking that they're curing disease when actually diseases are simply running their course? Chapter 27. For why do they oracularly foretell cures after a long time? And why, if they are almighty, do they not effect cures without administering medicine? And for what reason do they prescribe remedies to some of those who pray to them, while to some, and it may be more suitable cases, they give no response? Thus, whenever a cure is going to take place spontaneously, they promise, in order that they may get credit for the cure. And others, having been sick and having prayed and having recovered spontaneously, attributed the cure to those whom they had invoked and make offerings to them. So apparently this is another trick the gods, so to speak, actually demons, will play on people. They will trick them into this cycle of praying to their god for help and then receiving it, but it's demonic activity. Or seeing in a dream a manifestation of their idol or god telling them they need to take this type of potion, they need to take this type of medicinal herb. And then when they do it, it's only prescribed by the demon when they know the person is about to be healed anyway, is about to be over their sickness. So when the person takes that herb or potion or whatever, tincture, and then they're healed. Well, the disease has actually run its course, but the demon wants to take credit for that person feeling like they're healed. So it is a game that the demons play with people to make them think that they are being healed by their god, their pagan idol, when it's, of course, the demon himself playing a trick. He continues, those, however, who after praying have failed are not able to offer their sacrifices. But if the relatives of the dead or any of the children inquired into the losses, you would find the failures to be more than the successes. But no one who has been taken in them is willing to exhibit an accusation against them through shame or fear, but on the other hand, they conceal the crimes which they believe them to be guilty of. More often than not, a person is not healed by the remedies that are prescribed to them by these demonic influences. And so more times than not, there's no effect. It doesn't help them at all. But then occasionally a demon will hit the nail on the head, so to speak, and predict their healing correctly and give them the magic salve that will make them better. And then they attribute it to their god. You know, the one time out of 10 that it works, the person still thinks their god did it. So this is the way that the demons work on the minds of the afflicted. Chapter 29. For God is almighty. He is good and righteous, now long-suffering to all, that those who will, repenting of the evils which they have done and living well, may receive a worthy reward in the day in which all things are judged. Of course, they're talking about the great white throne judgment, saying God is righteous and he wants people to do well and to live well and to overcome these demonic things. Wherefore now begin to obey God by reason of good knowledge, and oppose your evil lusts and thoughts, that you may be able to recover the original saving worship which was committed to humanity. For thus shall blessings straightway spring up to you, which when you receive, you will thenceforth quit the trial of evils. He's saying that the way to escape the battle of demonic activity, the back and forth of, temptation, sin, and then trying to somehow make that better, fix yourself, be healed of a disease. All of these things, it's a cycle that the demons want to get you inside of. The trial of evils, he calls it. The way out is through God, is through righteousness, is through putting away evil lusts and thoughts. He says, but give thanks to the giver, being kings forever of unspeakable good things, with the King of peace. But in the present life, washing in a flowing river or fountain, or even in the sea, with the thrice blessed invocation. Now, he's talking about baptism here. The thrice blessed, meaning the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, which is how Christ taught the disciples to baptize people in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. He says, you shall not only be able to drive away the spirits that lurk in you, but yourselves no longer sinning and undoubtedly believing God, you shall drive out evil spirits and dire demons with terrible diseases from others. And sometimes they shall flee when you but look on them. He's saying that the Christian is not, if he is in good standing and he's doing the right things, he's taking care of himself, he's not indulging in sin, then the demons cannot inhabit a Christian in that state. Now, they can inhabit a Christian if he's backsliding. Now, that's been said in this already. But if the person is on the path and is acting in righteous ways and is avoiding sin, then the demon cannot stand that. He says even just looking at the demon from a person who's righteous makes the demon flee. He says, for they know, the demons know those who have given themselves up to God. They know who is a Christian and who's not. Wherefore, honoring them, they flee affrighted, as you saw yesterday, how when after the address I delayed praying for those who were suffering these maladies, through respect towards the worship they cried out, not being able to endure it for a short hour. Peter's talking about the prior day here at Tripoli in Beirut when he was talking to the crowds, and he had put off casting out demons from these people and healing them till the end of his speeches. And he says, did you not see that during those speeches, the demonically possessed people were crying out because of the things I was saying? They were crying out because of the worship to God we were giving. They were not able to endure it. So moving on to chapter 20. Do not then suppose that we do not fear demons on this account, that we are of a different nature from you. For we are of the same nature, but not of the same worship. Wherefore, being not only much, but altogether superior to you, we do not grudge you becoming such as we are, but on the other hand counsel you, knowing that all these demons beyond measure honor and fear those who are reconciled to God. So he's actually, there must be a group of people in the crowd that are not necessarily Christians, that are still pagan worshipers, and they're listening to Peter talk. He's saying, we are like you. We're the same nature as you as far as we're humans, but we are not of the same worship. We worship God. You worship these pagan idols. And he's saying that, we hope that you will come to our way of worship, worshiping the one true God, so that you can be saved from these afflictions. Because these demons, they fear people who honor God. Chapter 21, for in like manner as the soldiers who are put under one of Caesar's captains know to honor him who has received authority on account of him who gave it, so that the commanders say to this one, come, and he comes, and to another, go, and he goes, so also he who has given himself to God, being faithful, is heard when he only speaks to demons and diseases. And the demons give place, though they be much stronger than they who command them. He's saying that the Christian that commands the demon has that power, and the demon recognizes that power and authority because of the one who gave it. Who's that? That's Jesus Christ. So this should confirm a lot of the things you've heard about demonology, which is that the demons must obey at the name of Jesus Christ. Said by a true Christian who is righteous before God, using the name of Christ in authority, they must recognize that authority. And he says that even though the demons are actually, in many cases, much stronger than the human speaking the words against it, that the Christian who is faithful to God and is speaking into the authority of Jesus Christ is powerful enough in that moment to stop a demon. He says, "For with unspeakable power God subjects the mind of every one to whom he pleases. For as many captains, with whole camps and cities, fear Caesar, who is but a man, every one's heart being eager to honor the image of all for the will of God. All things being enslaved by fear do not know the cause. So also all disease-producing spirits, being awed in some natural way, honor and flee from him who has had a recourse to God, and who carries right faith as his image in his heart." The demons, the disease-producing demons, they fear this. They fear the faithful Christian and simply have to flee. The last chapter we'll read, chapter 25. He says, "And thus of those who are present, some are filled with inspirations, and some with strange friends, and some betake themselves to lasciviousness, and some to theft and murder. For the exhalation of blood, the libation of wine, satisfies even these unclean spirits, which lurk within you and cause you to take pleasure in the things that are transacted there, and in dreams surround you with false fantasies, and punish you with myriads of diseases. For under the show of the so-called sacred victims, you are filled with dire demons, which cunningly conceal themselves, destroy you, so that you should not understand the plot that is laid for you. For under the guise of some injury, or love, or anger, or grief, or strangling you with a rope, or drowning you, or throwing you from a precipice, or by suicide, or apoplexy, or some other disease, they will deprive you of life." So he is definitely speaking to these pagans who worship these idols, saying that these practices that you do, exhalation of blood, libation of wine, all these things that they do as a practice and ritual for the gods, the pagan gods, these things satisfy those unclean spirits. And he's trying to help them. Myriads of diseases, false dreams and fantasies. He says to these people that they are filled with demons and they don't even know it. And so he's taken this time here in Tripoli to tell all these people that they can change all of it by just coming to Jesus Christ and worshiping God the Father. And that if they don't, they may be due for some serious injuries. Some kind of horrible thing could happen to them, because that is the design of the demons, to somehow ruin a person's life to the point of death so that they can then drag them down to hell with them. So I just felt like this information given here, that's all the reading we're going to do, but the information here on demonology is just incredible, and it confirms so many things that I've studied in other places, but never all at once like that. It's all in the same place, and it's this is Peter. Just some amazing information that helps us understand so many things. And you can understand too now in Acts, as we've been studying on the Bible Scribe channel on our live stream, that the apostles advised the Gentiles not to follow Mosaic law, but to avoid things strangled, meat sacrificed to idols, blood, things like this. Well, this passage we just read from the Clementine Homilies, from Peter's teaching, seems to help us understand that. We are talking about pagan peoples, and a lot of these practices were either influenced by or causing them to be prey to these demons, demonic activity. So that's possibly part of the reason the apostles came up with that small set of rules for the Gentiles, as opposed to following Mosaic law, just telling them, hey, stay away from idol worship stuff, because that is demonic activity and it will draw you away from God. Seems to make sense with the context that we've had here in the passage we've read. So I hope that gives you guys some interesting things to think about, to ponder. But I think that the things it talks about that are so important, that, when a person has a demon attached to them, that the demon does everything in its power for that person not to realize that it is demonic activity, that there's something going on. It tricks them. It plays tricks on their minds. It makes them think they're sick or there's some other thing wrong with them that's not demonic. will trick their mind into thinking that they need to do certain things. It'll trick them into doing like horrible sins, like maybe promiscuity, sexual activity, because the demon enjoys that. It will trick a person into overeating constantly because the demon enjoys that. It will trick the person into doing anything that the demon wants to do. So far as even trying to bring the person to a point of suicide or death so that the demon can then drag them down to their place where they feel most comfortable, in Hades, in hell, in the fires of eternal punishment. The demons love that, while humans, of course, are punished by it. So this is the nature of demonic activity. And I think even in the modern time, we should realize that if this is true, and this is how demons operate, that we all need to stay on the right path to keep that away from our lives. Stay righteous, stay away from sin and the things that will open you up to and cause demons to be attracted to and attached to you. And it also should help you understand that when a person is under demonic influence, that they will avoid a Christian or a person with the answers at all costs. Demons are very proficient at this, causing a person to think that they need to get away from you as a Christian or get away from a good person or anyone that could help. So they don't go to church. They won't go see a priest. They won't go see a good Christian person that they know. They don't like that. And it's because the demon inside them is making them think that way, is causing them to avoid the person. So just so many good nuggets of information there and things that we need to be aware of in our daily walk to keep ourselves on the straight and narrow. One other thing that I did think of on this was some of the things it said about the ways to starve out a demon were really interesting. Like it said to abstain from sexual activity. It said to abstain from food by fasting. And again, we heard Christ in the Gospels teach the disciples that some only come out by prayer and fasting. But this does make me think back to things I've heard about Christian asceticism in general, even in these early times of the church, that many Christians would fast very often. And it might have been some of this to try to prevent any demonic activity in their lives, prevent them becoming gluttonous or allowing a demon to come into their life. So think about those things as you consider how you live your life and how you work to stay on the righteous path. Work to stay close to God, work to keep your faith strong in God himself. And that causes these demons to run the other direction. It causes people with demons in them to also avoid you. Note that that is a reality. So you may have to actually pursue someone who is demon possessed in order to help them, because they will run away. But we can all do our best to keep ourselves holy, and in that way make ourselves strong against this kind of activity, keep it out of our lives. So I hope that helps, and thank you guys so much for your time. Definitely take time, if you have it, and read the Clementine Homilies. I've gotten so much incredible information out of this, and this is only a small fraction of the reading I've been doing for my study on Simon Magus, which I have actually gotten a lot of information together, mapped out his entire life so far, and I'm just trying to make sure I have all the pieces together. Also, I have a whole section on his doctrines, which will be coming soon in a video. So thank you for your time, and God bless you.